Live from the studios of 106.7 My Talker Radio, it's time for your Legal Line. Local attorney Thom Goolsby has been giving out legal advice in southeastern North Carolina for decades. And now he's back on the air to help you with all your legal issues. Your Legal Line is sponsored by Goolsby Law Firm, helping real people with real problems. Find them online at myattorneythom.com. And now, here's your host, Thom Goolsby.
Good evening and welcome to the Legal Line. We got the fine young cannibal. She drives me crazy bringing us in. I hope I'm not driving you crazy. I'm here to help. If you've got a legal question, problem, concern, something that's causing you stress or just worry, or you've got a nagging legal question you've never had answered, I will try to solve that for you tonight. The number here is 833-8764. Here on WMYT, My Talker Radio. I absolutely love radio. I've been doing this for about 20 years, since I first moved to Wilmington and got on the radio with my good friend, the deceased Don Ansell, who was on radio here forever and ever. I know Curtis had worked with him for years. Good fella. Started my show actually with him and enjoyed doing it for many years, and took a hiatus for several years, and now back on the air, and it is just loads of fun. And we already have calls coming in, so we'll keep pushing through as many of you as we possibly can today. And again, you got a legal question, problem, concern, here's the way to get up: 833-8764, or you can always go to my website, myattorneythom.com. Good evening, caller. What can we do for you?
Hey, good evening, Tom. How are you doing tonight?
I'm great, sir. What can I help you with?
Well, I have some questions for you regarding malicious and frivolous charges.
Mm-hmm. Were these filed against you by someone going to the magistrate's office and taking those charges out here in North Carolina?
Exactly, up in Craven County.
Up in Craven, okay. I can't tell you exactly how it works here. I can tell you that our current district attorney, who I believe is running unopposed for district attorney, a friend of mine for many years, Ben David, has instituted a policy here in New Hanover County that when anybody files one of those charges, the party who files it has to agree and in good faith go to mediation, otherwise the charge is dismissed. So tell me about your particular case. Is this one in which you are involved?
It is.
Okay.
It actually involves a case of harassment that myself and three of my friends filed against a gentleman who was basically harassing us on public land while we were hunting.
Okay.
And later that afternoon, after we had visited the magistrate, who the wildlife officer took us to the magistrate to file the charges.
Okay. He couldn't file them. Yeah, he couldn't file them because he hadn't seen the activity, I'm guessing.
Right.
Okay.
So later that afternoon, after this gentleman learned that we had filed 4 counts of hunter harassment against him, he immediately went to the magistrate's office and countercharged us with harassment, or excuse me, with trespassing. So it was
land that was not his.
Correct.
Okay.
The land that he had leased, but we were absolutely positively not trespassing as agreed by the wildlife officer. Otherwise, the charge could have never been filed.
I got you.
So it's strictly a case of him retaliating.
Yeah.
And to further the plot, 2 days later, for whatever reason, he took out 2 additional charges only against me. Again, for trespassing and harassment, when I wasn't even in the county. He did it strictly to create illegal harassment against me.
Okay. I will tell you what you need to do. I deal with these kind of cases all the time and have for 20-something years. What you need to do, I would recommend that you consider, all three of you consider hiring an attorney. I don't know that there would be any conflict at all, since none of you guys committed any kind of crime and have no criminal culpability. Sounds like you could probably have the same attorney that would represent you.
Okay.
So you and typically in these cases, this guy may or may not have an attorney. Your attorney may be able to privately prosecute him. A lot of cases, I've done a couple of trials lately where the state steps aside when you've got cross warrants, and they let the two attorneys put the cases on representing the parties, and they give them the permission to privately prosecute each of the cases since they're privately filed with the magistrate's office. So under North Carolina law, and I was curious about this law for years, and I think I have the correct history on it. We are one of the few states in the union that allow people to actually go before a magistrate without law enforcement and file their own criminal charges. You might wonder, why does that happen? Well, there are places where people go and try to get the police to take out charges. You can imagine in a county not like ours, but in a county, particularly in the old days, maybe the sheriff was his brother might have been a bad guy, and his brother's out doing all sorts of things, but his brother can never get charged at all because the sheriff just won't let the deputies take charges out against him. And our law was set up to allow people to go before a magistrate and take out charges exclusive of the police. So I like that citizen backstop that we have. I'm not opposed to that, but when people start using it to harass, I will, your attorney, I'm sure, will pull the standard form that they use, and on the form that he had to fill out, and you saw it yourself when you filled out your form, it asks if you have been charged by the other person of a crime. That's the first thing I look for, because a lot of magistrates will say, I don't take out cross warrants. You can take it.
The first magistrate he went to visit refused him.
And then he had to go to somebody else.
Yeah, he waited until later that afternoon when the magistrate came in.
Here's the next question. Did he actually lie on the form and say that, because he learned then that he needed to lie and say that nobody had taken out a warrant on him, this wasn't a cross warrant? So that's something to look at the form when you get into court. Your attorney can check that out for you. Next thing you need to do is, and the reason I would encourage you to hire an attorney, because when you file your later civil suit against this guy for the malicious charge and the malicious prosecution and all the things you had to go through to do it, you will have also that attorney to testify as a witness. I would think that attorney would likewise subpoena the law enforcement officer, that is the game warden, who took you down to the magistrate's office to fill the charge. He might be a very good witness for you. And you just need to pursue your criminal charges fully against this guy, get him convicted, get yourself found not guilty, turn around, sue him for the harassment and for the legal expenses and all the other expenses that were created by it. I'd keep up with everything, all of your time spent, and all those other things, and at some point potentially take him to either small claims court or to another court to make him pay the damages for his malicious prosecution of you. So you do have the makings of all that. None of it's fun. All of it is time-consuming and expensive. Hopefully you can get some of your money, if not all of your money, back in the end. And hopefully you will have the satisfaction of having this guy convicted. He will also be ordered, I'm sure, when he is convicted, to stay away from you and have no contact. And if he does, you can call the police at any point, have him arrested on that. So you've got a number of opportunities there. I think the best thing you need to do to get it started is to contact an attorney up there in Craven County to represent you guys. And so you're going in exactly the right path. You're doing the right things, the things I would encourage you to do. Please call us back later after you get this done and let us know how it worked out for you. Thank you so much for your call. We very much appreciate it. That music means we've got to take our first break, folks. That's how easy it is to get answers. 833-8764 is the number. I'm Thom Goolsby, and you can find me on my website, myattorneytom.com. Hang on. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Legal Line. That's a little I fought the law and the law won. The law usually wins, and sometimes the better lawyer is the one who wins with the law. I'm Thom Goolsby. Good to have you with us here on the Legal Line. 833-8764. Always appreciate your calls. We've already been dealing with people's legal issues, problems, and concerns, and we'll continue to do that. 833-8764. A lot of stuff going on in the news. I sure have been busy in trials lately, and a whole bunch of stuff. I will not go into my particular cases. The media's been calling me about a lot of them, so I do reserve and conserve and protect my attorney-client privileges with my clients. You'll rarely hear me talking about cases until I have won them, and then, of course, I'm usually feel free to talk, but I want to always be careful to never prejudice anything, so please don't call me with any particular questions on the cases that I'm involved in. But I do love practicing law. I love trying cases. I have to tell you how special our legal system is here in the United States. People are always talking about it, and you hear certain stories about jury verdicts, but I have been doing this for 22 years now, and I have done hundreds of jury trials. I love juries. I love the fact that, unlike my friends who practice law, even in the UK, it's extremely hard in England to get a jury trial anymore. Places like France and Italy and Germany, they don't have juries. They have panels of judges, and these are usually separated out when they go to law school. Even they decide that they want to go and be a judge when they graduate from law school. And you don't get the ability to have regular citizens just come out of their regular lives, sit in and hear your case. We have constitutional guarantees of jury trials, of a jury of your peers, of 12 people who don't know you, who don't know the prosecution, who don't know the parties involved, unless you've got a really bad lawyer who actually lets somebody sit in like that. That's why we have something called voir dire, a French word that means to speak the truth. That's where it's called jury selection. That's what most people think. And the lawyers sit in court along with the judge, and they get to pick out the jury to hear either the civil case where money damages are being sought, or the criminal case where somebody might be facing at least probation or jail time, sometimes death. But the neat thing about our system is when you have controversies like that for money damages or for criminal cases, you get the ability to actually have a jury trial. You actually have real citizens that come into court, listen to the case, and render a verdict. And it is, as Abraham Lincoln said, it's possible to fool some of the people some of the time, all the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. And that is what I see with the jury. Almost in every single case, I can only think of maybe one case I had where I disagreed with the jury's decision. Now, I've not always won all the cases I've had. There are plenty of times that I try out a case because I know that I can get a better deal. I was talking to a young attorney about this today. I've tried out plenty of cases where in a criminal matter, I've been offered a very poor deal from the state. I've tried out a case where I've told my client they're probably going to be convicted, but I think they have a better chance to go before a judge, let the judge hear all of the evidence in the case, let a jury decide the case, and then after the judge has heard all the evidence, you'll probably get a much more reasonable result than what the state's offered you in a guilty plea. I've seen that happen over and over and over again. In fact, the last couple of trials I've done were exactly that way, where my client went in. One of them, I think my client was facing, I think they wanted to put him in jail for right at 18 months, almost, a year and a half. Pled not guilty, had a jury trial, was found not guilty on one of the charges, was found guilty on two of the charges, and actually got a probationary sentence. That was one where I told my client, you're going to be convicted of something, maybe a lot, but I think the only way we're going to get out the true facts in this case and mitigate your damage and have the judge do something reasonable, because I think my client in that case really deserved probation. He would be able to pay back restitution. It was a case that involved some questions of property theft, that he would be able to pay the victim back a lot quicker actually being on probation than he would if he was put in jail. But I had a prosecutor who wanted to see him put in jail. So I fought that out, and I would consider that a big win. My client didn't go to jail for 18 months. He's put on probation for a couple of years and has paid most of the damages back to the victim, which is actually what the victim wanted. So, again, I make those calls. I really enjoy trying cases. I enjoy representing folks. I find that in most cases, most of the people I represent don't have criminal records. They've simply made a mistake in life. They need help, and I have the ability to go in and help them resolve And most of them are dumbfounded that they might have done the stupid thing that they did, made a mistake, and I go in trying to mitigate the damage and help people. And of course, the other thing that I do is I deal with personal injury cases. Those are cases primarily auto accident cases, tractor-trailer underride cases, wrongful death cases where people get hurt seriously in automobile accidents. And I get to go into court and represent them in a trial. And that is almost always the first experience that my clients have ever had going into the courtroom, usually the first time they've ever been deposed. A deposition is something that's done in a legal case. Prior to trial, it's what we call discovery. And it means just that. You have the chance to discover the issues in the civil case. So we have something when we file a lawsuit, something called interrogatories, which are questions. Where were you going that day? How did the accident happen? How were you hurt? What kind of car were you driving? What kind of license do you have? All those kinds of things. And then we have something called admissions. That is where you ask somebody to admit things that you don't have to worry about proving at trial. Usually it's simple stuff. That you own the car you were driving, that you were driving down College Road, that you were going approximately 35 miles an hour, that you were, any number of things, just sort of handling those basic facts so they don't have to be proven up in court, so we can knock that out early. And then the other thing that we do is we have a request for production of documents. I'd like to see a copy of your insurance policy. I'd like to see a copy of your driver's license. Can I get a copy of your medical records? Those kind of things. Then we do something called depositions. And that is where, again, we get to bring the person or the parties or the potential witnesses in to a lawyer's office with everybody who's representing the people involved. Usually it's two lawyers, a court reporter who types everything down, and then one or both of the lawyers get to ask the person questions about the case, and they're just discovering what that person knows. And that can be later used at trial to impeach you if you change your testimony, or to aid the attorney in making sure they know exactly what you know so they can bring all that out in trial. Then, of course, we have mediation, and this is what has solved. I used to do several times a year, I would have personal injury trials, starting when I first started practicing about 20 years ago. And then I would say 5 to 7 years when I got into my practice, we adopted alternative dispute resolution in our state. Arbitration for small cases, and for some cases where it's mandated under contracts. And at the state level, we adopted mediation. Now, this is the best thing that happened in litigation in North Carolina since the day we formed our courts back during the days of the British rule, our common law courts. And what it does is it gets the parties together after discovery, after you've gone through all those processes of finding out what happened and talking to all the parties and getting them on paper, getting all your facts in, and you go before another lawyer who has been trained as an arbitrator. And it's basically a mediated settlement conference. And both parties for the first time get to hear the best and the worst of their cases from both sides. Usually solves the case. But we're going to take our second break. Again, the number here on the legal line, 833-8764. All you've got to do is pick up the phone and give us a call, and I'll be happy to help you. Again, myattorneytom.com. Hang with us. We'll be right back here on WMYT.
Your legal line is back, and the phone lines are open. Give Tom a call now at 910-833-8764. 833-8764. Once again, here's your host, Thom Goolsby.
Good evening. Welcome back to the legal line. The number 833-8764. As the announcer said, I am Thom Goolsby. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Came over here from my office just after returning from court today. I've been in court every single day this week. That is what I do, and I sure enjoy it. I appreciate the opportunity to have been practicing law pretty much here in New Hanover County, although I've handled federal cases all over the country. Used to practice some up in Raleigh, but never liked it anywhere else but here. This is a great place. We got a lot of great lawyers, a lot of nice folks. It's just a great courthouse to go to, the New Hanover County Courthouse, and I sure enjoy it. I have spent many, many days, many hours trying cases and helping people, and it's just been a lot of fun, and I sure appreciate the ability to do it and appreciate the ability here on the radio and to help you. Looking at a number of interesting legal stories across the country I wanted to share with you before I get back to your phone calls. Again, 833-8764. We'll click through as many as we can before we run out of time, but just a few stories I'd like to touch on. Legal battle brews over name change to Rocky Top. Now, you all remember the song Rocky Top. It was written back in 1967 by a duo, Borleau and Felice Bryant. They wrote Rocky Top back in 1967. It's currently owned by the House of Bryant. That is the corporation that currently owns the song. So you got a development group that's promised to turn a tiny East Tennessee town currently known as Lake City into a tourist mecca if it goes through a name change. And the plan is to cash in on the fame of the song Rocky Top, a bluegrass standard that's been recorded over the years by Dolly Parton, Glenn Campbell, and many, many others. I think you'll hear it at University of Tennessee football games. They play it all the time. But the Gatlinburg-based House of Bryant, which owns the rights to the song and multiple Rocky Top trademarks, is suing. Now, why are they suing? Well, they're trying to get an injunction against Lake City from changing its name, plus they want court costs and damages. There is no actual town of Rocky Top, Tennessee. The lawsuit says, from the Bryant says, quote, "We instead are referring to a fictional or idyllic place in their song. Last year, a group of East Tennessee officials and businessmen began promoting the idea of creating a real Rocky Top. The group promised to help build a massive tourist complex in Lake City, a town of about 1,800 people, if it can legally change its name to Rocky Top." And you might say, how in the world can people who own a song keep a city from changing their name to the name of that song? Well, they have that name trademarked. It is not a real city, never has been a real city. It came from a song. They have invested lots and lots of money over the years and make lots and lots of money off that, and they have a right to control who uses that name, at least under the federal trademark laws, and they are darn sure going to protect it. And unless the little town can provide them with something that satisfies them as to how that would improve the visibility, the profitability of that name, they probably aren't going to agree to it at all. So I just found that interesting. I've always liked that song, Rocky Top, and you do hear the University of Tennessee playing it a lot, if I recall correctly, the Volunteers. And then another interesting one. We talked on the first show I did getting back on the air about what's going on in Colorado and Washington State with pot being grown legally, marijuana being grown legally. Well, here's another interesting update. Pot growing warehouses are in short supply as demand for legal weed surges. This comes to us from the Denver Post, and the article goes like this: legal marijuana is delivering a powerful buzz to the typically unglamorous Denver industrial real estate market. It talks about the booming sales of cannabis, which is, of course, the Latin name for marijuana, have pot merchants scrambling to find enough vacant warehouses suitable for growing their product. Not every municipality in Colorado allows marijuana cultivation, and in Denver, where it's okay, very little space is available. Denver's industrial vacancy rate of 3.1% is abnormally low. It's the lowest in decades, according to brokers in the city. And it goes on to say that a commercial real estate tracking firm estimates that marijuana cultivation and manufacturing facilities in the city occupy, get this, 4.5 million square feet. That is the equivalent of 78 football fields of growing marijuana. And it's hydroponic, high-intensity marijuana, quite psychotropic, hallucinogenic, or whatever it is in its effect. This industry has come on, and this is a quote from the president of the brokerage firm there in Colorado. It says, this industry has come on so fast initially that we thought it might be a fad. But what's making it sustainable is supply, demand, and capital. Supply is deficient, demand is excessive, and capital is abundant. And it went on talking about how rabid demand for warehouse space is pitting pot dispensaries against pot dispensaries, while landlords are capitalizing by charging a premium on lease rates. Industrial brokers report instances where warehouse space leasing is as much as 4 times the prices paid before medical marijuana sales began to boom in 2009. The newest wave of impact in the industrial market is occurring as recreational pot sales, which began on January 1 of this year, are robust. State budget officials are projecting sales of $613 million over the next year. That's more than 50% higher than previous projections. That's on a top estimate of $345 million in medical dispensary sales. That's very interesting. January sales figures released Monday suggest that the market may be smaller than those projections. And it goes on to talk about recreational stores have been forced to curtail sales because strong demand from customers has outpaced supply. Nobody is growing enough marijuana, says Jason Thomas of Avalon Realty Advisors, a firm that specializes in finding warehouse space for cannabis cultivation. Activity is off the charts, but we're still not meeting demand. And it just goes on and on and on. Looks like you've got unsigned warehouses near Interstate 7 in Denver. Master grower Evan Schlick has to tiptoe gingerly among a green expanse of 750 marijuana plants. Growing space is so valuable that it's a waste to create aisles between the rows of cannabis that supply Walking Raven dispensaries in Denver. It is really interesting what is going on out there. Just talking about how much people are growing marijuana and how much it is booming. I tell you, though, I don't know, people have asked me about that, and as a lawmaker, what I think about it. And I have said continually, actually said it to WWAY here in Wilmington, the TV station yesterday, that, I think the government has enough money to operate. We don't need to start getting into gambling, prostitution, and drug sales in order to fund our government. We need, in order for a society to be productive, we need sober people that are out working, not gambling, getting high, and hiring prostitutes. But that's my own opinion. Yours can be different. That's going to take us out. When we come back, I want to tell you about a fake legal expert who duped a victim out of $100,000 and how you can keep that from happening to you, and about a proposed Ten Commandment display in Georgia that may be unconstitutional. 910-833-8764. Stay with us. This is Thom Goolsby. MyAttorneyTom.com is the website. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Legal Line. This is Thom Goolsby. The number 833-8764. It is great to have you with us. We're in the down low right here, heading up to the top of the hour where we'll finish up the show, but we have had a lot of fun here tonight. I always appreciate the ability to be on the air and help people with their legal problems, questions, and concerns. Before we went out on the last break, I was going to tell you about a story that comes to us from Houston, Texas. And this is about a fake legal consultant duping victims out of $100,000. Authorities are looking for more victims of a Houston man who they say pretended to be a legal consultant and stole more than $100,000 from at least one person. Jeffrey Wayne Wilson, 34, is charged with a credit debit card fraud case. According to the Harris County Sheriff's Department, Harris duped at least one person into believing he was a legal consultant and the representative of a well-known and now defunct law firm. Investigators say the victim gave him $100,000 to perform legal work that she claims was never done. In fact, they say Wilson never even had the credentials to do the job. He's also accused of using the victim's debit card for personal purchases. And they're trying to collect other people who have been duped and defrauded by Jeffrey Wayne Wilson. And again, this is in Houston, Texas. What do you do when someone offers you legal services, comes to your home, maybe calls you on the phone, tells you that they're a licensed attorney or they work for a law firm? You can easily go to the North Carolina State Bar's website. Just put in North Carolina State Bar. You can put in the name of the attorney. You can see who that person is. You can see if there are any pending ethical charges against them, if they're still licensed to practice. It even publishes their phone numbers so that you can verify that the number you're calling is actually that attorney. And again, There's plenty of attorneys around town that are happy to help you with anything whenever you're looking at hiring anyone, particularly hiring someone out of state. I think it's always worth seeing who locally might handle those kinds of matters and how they might advise you. I had a very interesting case years ago, actually dealt with William Shatner. I had a guy who came to my office to see me. He was putting on Star Trek conventions. And he came to see me. He was putting it on in another town in North Carolina, Charlotte, Winston-Salem, somewhere. And this is before William Shatner became super popular again. It was maybe 15 or so years ago, before Boston Legal and before the new Star Trek started coming out. And he had called William Shatner at a number he had been given by a friend, and a guy answered the phone named Bobby and said, yes, we can have Bill there, and, this is what you need to do. This is really before the Internet. Internet was sort of in its infancy. Not really the kind of thing that you relied on at that point. So he calls this number. Guy tells him what to do. You need to send a certified cashier's check for X amount of money. You need to book this ticket first class, and here's how you have to pick him up, and here's what he'll do and all, and do this, do that. We'll send your contract through the mail, sign it, send it back with a certified cashier's check. And it was a significant amount of money. And my client was like, I'm worried this is a scam. Can you check on this for me? So sure enough, I called the number, and the guy said, Bill's house. And, I spoke to the fellow on the phone, and, he said, oh, yeah, this is legitimate. This is the way we do it. We've been doing it this way for years. And I was like, oh, okay, all right. So I didn't leave it at that. I picked up the phone and called an attorney that I knew in Los Angeles who was an attorney in entertainment law. And I asked him, I said, look, my client's trying to hire William Shatner to come and do a Star Trek convention here in North Carolina, and I'm really worried about, and he goes, well, let me guess, did you dial 803 blah blah, and I said, yeah, I dialed that. And did a guy answer named Bobby? I said, yeah. Did he tell you to send a certified cashier's check for X amount of money? I said, yeah. Did he send your guy a contract to him? I said, yeah. I said, is this a scam? He goes, no, that's exactly the way they do it. I was like, okay, all right. I verified it through a friend, called the guy back, my client, had him come in, went over everything in the contract, make sure he understood what the contract was. He got his certified cashier's check, put it in a FedEx envelope, sent it off to William Shatner's home, and sure enough, everything worked out. Mr. Shatner showed up at the airport on time. They picked him up in the proper vehicle, took him to the hotel with the kind of room that he wanted. He came down at the proper time, gave his speech, and then spent an hour or so, whatever it was required in the contract, to talk to people and sign autographs, and then he was taken back to the airport and flew back home, many thousands of dollars richer, and as was my client. The convention worked out great. Everybody had a good time, and it was legit. But my client was not one of those foolish people that sent money in the mail to an unknown place when he had or should have had real questions about it. He got somebody who could find out what the scoop was, make sure that he was protected, and actually see to it that he didn't get ripped off. I've had people all the time. Actually, years ago, had a client, a husband and wife, and we've all heard now of the Nigerian web scams. Well, they used to do those through the mail and everywhere else. We actually had a client years ago who sent $100,000 to Prince Abuju, whatever it was, in, of all places, Nigeria, thinking that they were going to help him recover his fortune, and they would get, in return for the $100,000 that they borrowed on their house, they would get $100 million or $75 million or something back. I've also had people that have gone through the scams with the Iraqi dinars. That's another huge scam. You've been hearing for years the people who got all those dinars that aren't worth the paper they're printed on, that they're somehow going to be revalued at some point and you're going to become fabulously wealthy. Well, if you're holding on to those dinars, I'm willing to bet you that that is never, ever going to occur, because you've been told it's going to occur multiple times. And there are all sorts of great little scams on the web where you can go out and buy dinars and just wait for them to magically be revalued, and you will go from a thousandaire to a millionaire. I will tell you, you've gone from a thousandaire at this point to a dollaraire, or maybe a 50-centaire, because those are not worth anything, I believe, and I don't think they'll ever be worth anything. But there's always hope, isn't there? Always hope. Again, if it sounds good to be true, it almost always is. And if you will talk to the right people, they'll probably be able to assure you of that. So again, it's worth talking to good lawyers. It's worth checking things out. And it's worth not simply sending your money off to people that you don't know. And a lot of good lawyers out there that are ready, willing, and able to help you. I will be spending my morning on, let's see, I've got to go to Raleigh tomorrow for some Senate business with the Justice and Public Safety Oversight Committee dealing with a lot of our laws in North Carolina and how they're working out. And then, of course, I'll be spending my Friday morning in traffic court, as I always am. And remember my advice on traffic tickets, folks. Never, ever, 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 ever pay off a traffic ticket unless you've talked to a lawyer and you understand fully how much that's going to impact your insurance rates. Because even 1 point from a simple speeding ticket on your insurance will hit you with at least, well, the potential of a 25% increase in your insurance rates under the North Carolina Safe Driver Incentive Program for a full 3 years. So if you don't care what your insurance costs, feel free to pay that ticket off. But that's not my legal advice. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm not going to give the number out again, but I will give my number out, 763-3339, or easier, just go to myattorneytom.com. Always happy to help. God bless you. Have a great evening. Be with you this same time starting at 6 next Wednesday. God bless. Good night. I'm Thom Goolsby, myattorneytom.com. Have a great evening.